And it's in FNAF 3. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learned about the fire, we thought that was it. We, for at least, 20 seconds until people started brightening the image of the final screen, which is just, classic FNAF by now. And then that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was in the image of the news article about the fire. Now, I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William has the news outlets working for him too, or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it's really what started us down the rabbit hole of the several hoops that we would have to jump through to find more clues and lore. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of mobile games. Anyway, this image set us on a path to thinking that William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be, or if this was just an Easter egg. If it was meant to allow for more games in the series if Scott wanted to, because originally he wanted to end it with FNAF 3, but hey, either way it happened, and here we are 6 games and 15 books later. And at 9, Help Wanted ending. The final minigame of Help Wanted is Pizza Party, where you have to navigate your way through the various rooms of the pizzerias to get to your pizza party. The whole time you're having to avoid animatronics that will sometimes jump scare you, sometimes not. But the real horror comes from when you get to your own party. It wasn't thrown by your friends, it wasn't thrown by your family, it was thrown by Glitchtrap. That's right, Dio Fluffy in the back room. After seeing the ruined bodies of Chica and Bonnie, Glitchtrap appears from behind a curtain. Your final moment is spent walking through that curtain as the screen goes black. Next thing you know, you're on stage with a microphone in your hand. That's right, you've been stuffed. Put in a Freddy suit by none other than William Afton himself. But how? He wasn't supposed to be in the game, right? He was some code that got scanned in by accident. Well, doesn't matter now. That's one of the scariest moments of any game though. You experiencing what every child has once William has shown them where the other pizzas are kept. Just, Jesus, I don't even, it gives me chills, especially with that dancing at the end that makes it worse. And at 8, the first one. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological issues that they could use to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst way possible. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, okay? I'm not a dad, I think, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I wouldn't just be burning down restaurants in an attempt to send William to hell. I would be doing that myself, an express route right downstairs. And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point for the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voice lines that played when you get killed, which is good because it happens a lot. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story and serves as a link between the original story and the new one. The new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world he got himself locked in, or now being Burntrap or whatever the hell he is. But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell this time, or stuck in purgatory. But as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for eternity. But in reality, this must just be what he's seeing in his charging station in the basement of the Pizzaplex, since honestly, that's really the only way that this makes sense. At least if it's still Afton. Eventually he wakes up, which is him beating 50-20 mode and fights against us, which results in him getting grabbed by the Blob and maybe surviving, because we still don't know. And at 6, FNAF 6. William surviving the FNAF 6 fire was much harder to believe when it came to it, at least before Bunny Call was released. However, some fans seem to note that during the final cutscene of FNAF 6, during Henry's speech, while the other animatronics were engulfed by flames, Springtrap was ahead of them. This was especially hard to believe given that we thought Ultimate Custom Night took place in hell, which is really impossible to get to unless you die. Well, me being the exception. I party with Satan regularly. He can't hold his liquor. It's kind of weird. I don't understand it. Either way, this was all proven to be true when Bunny Call was released and William was in the hospital in the man in room 1280. However, this eventually was proven also not to be the case because it's FNAF. I gotta say, that's the biggest troll in the entire series. Or at least one of the biggest trolls. Come on, Scott, really? You kill him off only to make him alive in the books, and then kill him off in that same story, and then you prove that he's alive again in Security Breach? Or maybe he isn't even alive anymore and is just a possessed animatronic? Who knows at this point? Not even Scott, not even Steel Wool, not even whoever's taking over next. Halfway through into number Number 5, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin this game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside of Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, and then he goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break a window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too, technically speaking at least. Anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that's a horrific thought. And at 4, Assimilate. The ending of FNAF VR, like the real ending where you fight Glitchtrap, is certainly a scary moment. It also just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy just pops into your VR headset, then takes over your body so that you end up killing for him. It's kind of messed up. And actually not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. She ends up knowing what's going on too. Like she actively talks in hushed tones and about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like what the hell is the dynamic here? And by she and her, I mean Vanessa, Vanny, obviously. I mean, like, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then, like, causing them to make a rabbit costume because you're still kinky furry is a whole other set of equations. I don't even want to talk about how messed up that is. She knows there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying in her head, and she knows what's going on. Ah, man, like, being willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, even though you know that William's gonna take over, that's that. Man, you really need a therapist. So does William, honestly. Getting close to the end in number 3, Burntrap. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in Security Breach, named Burntrap according to the game files. He only appears in the canon ending, which is the Afton ending, or the true ending, whatever you want to call it. This form is the result of Vanny downloading William's soul from the digital realm into an old hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, endoskeleton, and the little remains of his corpse, which just seems to be an extremely burnt scrap trap animatronic, hence the Burntrap name. Burntrap's new rotten form appears to be his old but modified, tattered, greenish brown spring Bonnie suit that has become even more severely withered, tattered, and burned because, you know, it's been through like 3 fires, with the whole entire lower jaw ripped out, revealing his skull covered in blood with some burnt flesh remaining and some metallic eyes and small pupils. The suit is missing fur with the exception of their chest, hips, legs, upper legs. The rest is extremely burnt. He's very charred. He's like charcoal at this point. Like you can use him to forge a sword. His old endoskeleton has seemingly been replaced with the newer endoskeletons that the Glamrock animatronics have, and that makes him even taller and gives him sharp claws and fingers. So yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this is on this list. But ultimately, in number 2, the Blob. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things. After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using the 3 monitors to keep burning him. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come after Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out if they can. When Springtrap is burned though, the Blob, which has like that tentacle monster thing, will attack and make sure that he doesn't get free, which is really weird and horrifying considering how, you know, I don't know if he's dead. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, but the tentacle monster's identity was never revealed. But originally, after this game, the final Fazbear Frights book would have released, which would have showed us that the tentacle monster we would have been talking about is in fact Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, or it is in the books. But I guess while they share similar elements, they aren't the same thing, because Baby's eyes are off, so it could be that the original 5 missing children are getting their revenge on Afton, since those could be the souls inside of Ennard, which would have been Molten Freddy, and that's seemingly the face that the Blob is using, even though it's Funtime Freddy. But you know what? The only way to explain this series fully is to say that every game takes place in a different universe. Every game is separate from each other. That's the only way it works. And finally, and in number 1, the spring locking. I believe we all know this story by now. Everything was going well at first, okay? The cops couldn't pin him down, and he was on his way to immortality. Well, technically he had it already thanks to the one you should not have killed, but once William discovered Remnant, however, he spiraled. He wanted to use it to fuel his life and truly make him immortal. So, in an effort to study it further, William lures the possessed animatronics to the back room where they can't access it, and then he uses it to dismantle them, planning to melt them down into their endoskeletons to fuse that soul metal into his body. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the souls of the victims that he claimed however many years ago. I think it might have been like 2 or something, I don't know. Shocked, from seeing his literal murder victims, he ends up fleeing into his spring bodysuit, which also makes him feel powerful. However, his haste coupled with the leaking room ended up causing the spring locks to fail, crushing him in torturous agony for the next 30 years. However, he didn't die from this, because as we learn in the Man in Room 1280, he was being kept alive by the spirit of yet another victim. So he's been living in agony for the past 30 years, and that makes him damn well deserving of the #1 spot. Before you ask, Garvey isn't even a thing, okay? So like, I'm not gonna talk about Garvey. It's not even in the FNAF canon. Why are you asking me about it? Leave me alone. In at 10, animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the start. Thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And that they were built with special containment chambers inside to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, which we see the Funtimes actually have in their blueprints from FNAF 6. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, even maybe before his kids were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which is not simple at all. If anyone like cosplays Vanessa, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. Possibly killed wife. This hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so it's currently not canon. Many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise, even though technically we know nothing about her, and she could still be alive for all we know. Many people consider her to have died in either a car crash or because William killed her, and those are like the most common thoughts on the matter. Although the her dying in a car accident thing came from like a FNAF original music video that was probably using Minecraft characters that is in no way canon to the series. Like, I've had people yell at me in my DMs telling me that it's canon that she died in a car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even canon that she died, really, but the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic parts filled bucket. Since it's only a possibility though, it's only number 9. If it gets confirmed, I'm more than willing to bump it up higher, because like statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should have been on her guard. And at 8, missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's like the inciting moment for the whole series, but I think it's worth calling out at least number 8. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated but were never able to find the bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives, alright, it just so happened to also be the end of their lives. And not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in this series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake, right? And at 7, stored his daughter. While we know Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter into an animatronic testing facility. That seems a bit too far if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us as Michael down there in the first place, and then we get shoved full of entered bits so that they can escape. Did William know about that plan? Unsure, because like in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her dad proud. So was that William's intention to like send us down there so Baby could get out? And if that was the case, why lock her down in there in the first place? I mean, like, if she was your daughter, why not have her just like chill around the house, right? Like in the books, Baby is able to transform between Baby and like a human looking animatronic at will. So why not add this to that version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little more messed up, but like more like you in the long run, right? I don't know. This family is messed the hell up, and nothing makes sense. And at 6, lied about Remnant. Now, this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full explanation as to why I think Afton was the one who lied about Remnant, go check out that video linked up in the iCard. But I'm going to wrap this up quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form, so how can it be molten but also be burnt by by fire. It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he could be killed by fire so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him, so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying, since literally every time he's been caught in a fire he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and entered in FNAF 6 as we see from the Blob in Security Breach. Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy pops up into your VR headset then takes over your body without your consent, so now you end up killing for him. That's kind of messed up. Actually, no, not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then causing them to make a rabbit costume so you're still a furry is a whole other set of kinks that I don't even want to talk about. And then, she knows that there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William has been saying to her, and she's now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police, and then lets that darker half track him down. And at 4, later that night. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it, since in the game files the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids, reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break his window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too. Technically speaking, anyone we encounter can be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also you're only alive because everyone you've ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and is going to yell at his son who's been in his room all day. Like, god damn bro, how much residual anger do you have suppressed inside your body? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics: Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is that he didn't get caught for it. Yeah, he didn't. The animatronics smelt like death, started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. He put these bodies in animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless it was his way of displaying his kills or something, like some of the crime shows like to mention. How some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did, since it helps them feel more powerful or something. Fuels their ego. Like maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, William could be using that as an ego boost, which is messed up. And also ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory, aside from the whole him killing before his kids died thing. Also, how did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? And ultimately, in at number 2, First Victim. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological clues that they could use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst ways possible. He starts killing off kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something even I fear. I'm not a parent, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put that down. I'd be doing it myself, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing and I don't even have someone that I could, in theory, make a daughter with. And finally, in at number 1, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is gotten his own kids killed. Sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte got Fredbear's closed, which resulted in him having to open up Circus Babies, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other Funtimes, which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing the animatronic. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic used in the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a springlock failure due to all the springlocks being active, since it was in animatronic mode, not suit mode, so there was nothing to fail, meaning that he had to have been crushed by the power of his jaw. And And while you could argue that it was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth was overpowered? As the suit technician, William knew what was going on and intentionally souped up the jaw power. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with innards and then letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. And at 10, the discovery of Remnant. The discovery of Remnant is only really described to us in the original novel series, with William learning about the souls of the missing children being basically infused into the endoskeletons of the original 5 animatronics. He melts them down to make the Funtimes, but this is when his goal changes. Originally, he, from what we can tell with our limited information, was just killing for the sake of it. However, now he had a purpose. He wanted to find the key to eternal life, to immortality, whether it be to bring maybe an extra child back, or to keep himself in the land of the living. The moment William discovered Remnant, he totally changed his game plan. However, that's the importance to the FNAF story. To us, it could be when we discovered how Remnant was made in the Fazbear Frights books, when Dr. Phineas Taggart discovered that agony was the most powerful human emotion, and that the act of possessing something in the FNAF world was just your extreme agony latching onto a nearby object, which explains why it happened to the children, and then to William, which I'll talk about later on. And at 9, missing children's incident. The missing children's incident is really what started the FNAF series. It's also a tongue twister. It's a mystery that we all gravitated towards when we started looking into the first game, and it's the incident that really popularized the series, aside from it being terrifying. The incident has gone down in history as one of the scariest and most convoluted things in recent years, with whole threads being dedicated to why or how it happened, along with how William got away with it, since the suits were literally leaking body fluids like a rotting corpse would, and no one checked them out. It's incredible how far the series has come from just that one moment, and it being the catalyst for everything else. That makes it pretty important and very deserving of our number 9 spot. And before we get any further, if you're enjoying this video or just like the FNAF content in general, be sure you're hitting that like button on this one and all the videos to come. It really helps us out and it lets us know what you want to see more of. And at 8, scooping. The first scooping of the series was that of Elizabeth Afton, the Afton family daughter. The one that was probably going to make a lot of mistakes in high school and college, but at least she wouldn't have been as bad as her father. But then she went and ignored him, resulting in her getting scooped by Baby and getting crushed, thus possessing the animatronic, which is freaking terrifying to begin with, but I think that Scott was trying to teach his kids to listen to him, honestly. This event, while not the start of William's killing spree, is a pivotal moment in the series as well, because while he discovered the Remnant already, now he had a personal stake in the matter. His kid had possessed an animatronic. And the key to life in this Remnant was also the key to keeping his daughter alive, and making sure that she could live forever, even if he used her to kill Henry in FNAF World, but that's beside the point. Her scooping is also what we believe made Crying Child scared of the animatronics and the inspiration behind the Nightmare animatronics' stomach mouths, which ended up coming into play during the Crying Child's death later in the timeline. Probably the same week, if we're being honest. Also, the FNAF series is like 3 or 4 years younger than Skyrim. That's it. And at 7, Scooping 2, Electric Boogaloo. Michael's scooping, however, defined the next parts of the series as a whole. We learn that he's working to right his father's wrongs, and we think that he's been doing it the whole time, even though it could have been Henry. Check the link in the iCard for the theory on that. But Michael's scooping was different. Instead of him dying, we see him get filled with ennard and then used as a skin suit to walk around in the world. We see his skin rot or bruise as it turns purple, drawing enough attention that Ennard thinks it's a better idea to roam the sewers as a mess of animatronic parts. But then he lets us know that he's coming after his father, so much so that once he traps him in Pizzeria Simulator, he stays there to make sure the deed is done, but it's not. And Michael gave his life in order for his father's reign of terror to end, but is this the last time we've seen Michael, or is always coming back hereditary? Only time will tell. Maybe reincarnation is a thing in the FNAF series. It very well could be. Scott's just pulling things out at this point. And at 6, Springlock. In FNAF 3, we watch as William Afton tries to save his own skin. He knows the animatronics are alive and tries to save himself by dismantling them in an effort to make sure they won't be able to, you know, stuff him into a furry suit. But in this action, as we see in the 8-bit minigames, he ends up releasing the souls of the characters. Well, I guess technically they aren't released, they just appear in an astral form or something, since they'd still be possessing the suits because he needs to melt them down. but yeah. This scares William because, you know, 5 of his murder victims are staring him down like Chica and a hot slice of pizza, so he does the one thing that he could think of, try and scare them back, by getting into the spring bodysuit he used to lure them away in the first place. This suit makes him feel powerful, it's a confidence booster, it makes him feel like he's in control. A weird way to express a dom kink, but okay, I'm not judging. However, he does this so fast and the room was so moist and wet that instead of scaring them, he gets himself snapped. The spring locks fail and the suit shoots plenty of tiny and large bits of endoskeleton metal into his body, causing him to collapse and convulse, oozing blood like the kids in their suits. But this causes so much hassle because now, 30 years later, when he is set free, he can still kill. He isn't the frail old man that he should be. He has the strength of the animatronic behind him, and he's gonna use it. Halfway through number 5, Bite of 83. The Bite of 83, not to be confused with the Bite of 87, is one of the most confusing moments in a timeline sense. Like, we know it happened in 1983, but what happened to the crying child after? Does William indeed put him back together? Does he possess something? What happened to crying child? But this is an important moment too, because despite the confusion between 1987 and 1983, this would only drive William deeper into his madness, causing him to do unspeakable and unexpected things, like turn his son into a robot and give him false memories of killing his younger sibling so he wouldn't go back to a Freddy's location, naming the new robot version Michael, for instance. Or by just going on even more of a killing spree, not caring about the consequences of his actions because what else does he have to lose? And if crying child does end up possessing the security logbook or even Golden Freddy, then that only goes to serve this point too. The Bite of 83 is a horrific but important moment. And for Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame from FNAF 3 was planned to be the end of the series. Scott said that the game was meant to be the last, but people were disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare, so he made FNAF 4, which makes sense now since it's pretty much an overcorrection. That's why those animatronics are so damn terrifying and horrific, and why FNAF 4 is listed as the end of the original FNAF story. The souls at the time of FNAF 3's release are in fact set free, hence the good and bad endings, but come FNAF 4 and more so sister location, we learn that this isn't the case, since the Remnant metal used to make the Funtime is actually made of the Remnant from the original 5 kids, which causes some interesting plot holes but could help explain a lot. Like, the children's spirits could have been released, but the metal was still infused with their agony perhaps, allowing it to be more conductive for spirits, hence why Elizabeth possesses babies so quickly, or something along those lines, maybe? I don't know. The horrific implications of the original ending to the series make this one of the most important FNAF lore moments, especially if it had ended there. Imagine if it had. Imagine how simple the games would have been if it just ended in FNAF 3. And that was the ending. We set the spirits free and that was it. We were good. Didn't work. Getting close to the end of number 3, FNAF 6. FNAF 6 is another one of those ending sequences, where the series looks like it could have ended, and while slightly more convoluted, it would have been okay. We would have hammered out the rest eventually. The FNAF 6 ending, though, was indeed the end of multiple animatronics. Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Ennard were all released in the FNAF Fire, as well as Michael, who stays to burn, and Henry, who stayed so nobody would remember this place or this story. However, we know one escaped. Springtrap, or Scraptrap, William Afton himself, managing to evade death once again, and it wouldn't be until later where we found out and understood how, and yet we figured he would be back. He always comes back, and now, with nobody to stand against him, he's free to do whatever he wants. Henry isn't fighting him, Michael isn't fighting him, they both thought he would burn, but he's free, as free as he can be while being stuck inside a video game world. For now. Penultimately into number 2, The Man in Room 1280. While plenty of people brush these books off as just books, the story of The Man in Room 1280 is one of the most important pieces of lore we have gotten from this series. It answers a question that we've all had since FNAF 3. How does William keep surviving? How does he always come back? And while it may seem minuscule, this is the biggest hint that we've gotten in ages. Learning that William was possessed by the spirit of one of his victims explains more in the series than any Easter egg Scott had left us. I don't care that Funtime Foxy can mimic voices, or how the Scooper can inject a Remnant. It mattered how William's signature line of "I always come back" is true, and this book delivered. It also explains how he came to possess a hard drive that got scanned into Help Wanted. It explains that since he was possessed, he was alive in FNAF 3, and that explains how he survived the fire in both FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. It showed us that everyone knows what he did despite not being convicted. It provided so much for us, and that makes it the most important piece of confirmed lore that we have. have. There is one moment that is more important, but we have nothing on it at the time of this recording. And that point is, finally, in at number 1, the breaking point. The breaking point in this scenario is referring to the moment William started killing. We don't know when it was, we don't know why it was. To us, it's just always been a thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was an incident before that of the missing children's from the first game that was just his first kill. We don't know what drove him into killing, and there's no way that would have been the first, right? Nothing has been confirmed or even presented in the games. There are hypotheses that it was due to his wife or lover dying, perhaps due to childbirth, or that it was because one of his children died, but we know that can't be true unless he had another kid that we haven't seen, because he had designed animatronics to kill before his children died. There were really no indicators as to why he started on his mass killing spree. It could just be that he's insane and wanted to do it, or maybe he wanted to unlock the mysteries of life, or maybe it was just an accident the first time but then he got a taste for it. We don't know, and we don't even have any evidence to go off, so all of this is just hypothesis and guesswork. It can't even really be educated guesswork because we don't know enough about Afton himself to make a real connection. Like, we don't understand him as a person, if you kind of get what I'm saying. We know parts of his story, but we don't know what's in his brain, and that's what we would need to make an educated guess, at least from the crime shows I've watched. And at 10, don't run. What do you do if a group of bad guys is coming after you at a good pace and you have no way to defend yourself? You get the hell out of there faster than my dad trying to get milk, faster than William's wife left him, faster than me going outside when someone asks if I want to get Taco Bell. The fact that we're in this tiny office is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like, honestly, why would we stay in this room when we see on the security cameras that the animatronics aren't nearby? We can just like book it and be safe. Like, why isn't there a one-way emergency exit out of our office if this is such a hazard? We stay in this room, and that wouldn't happen in real life if you were in any sort of actual danger. In Game Lab, MatPat's old YouTube Red series, we saw him take on a real FNAF experience. However, when the animatronics were close, he didn't run away, he stayed in the office. Which could be used to say that since we consider that our safe space, we would do the same. But if our life was actually in danger, like mortal danger, we are gonna die danger, we would run like the wind, and not work there for 7 days before getting fired. Then at 9, animatronics. Now, ignoring the whole possession thing, since that still isn't real, I've seen no evidence of it, especially due to intense agony, the whole servos locking up so we need to let them roam free at night thing is complete and utter BS. Firstly, in a world where we can have shape-shifting animatronics and discs that emit such high-frequency sounds that they alter what we see, I'm supposed to believe that a servo motor is going to lock up? Secondly, why do they need to free roam in the first place? They just stand on a stage. A servo motor creates linear or circular motion, which is not the kind of movement the animatronics need. I mean, it could be, but if these are so complex that they can move on their own, why would they lock in the first place? Not to mention the whole, yeah, someone got bit on the head so we're gonna stop making them roam around freely. Like, why would you do that in the first place? Or the fact that kids literally tear Mangle to bits and then put her back together. Ironically, because, you know, put you back together. But still, it makes no sense. Before I continue on, can you do me a huge favor and hit that like button if you're enjoying the video or just the channel in general? And feel free to share this with a friend if you're so inclined. It really helps us out against the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. And you know, helps me keep my job. Thank you. And at 8, technology. Speaking of animatronics, what is up with the technology in this world? They're so advanced, but at the same time, they have the same tech that they would have in that era. The illusion discs are already crazy overpowered. Like, life is a perfectly balanced game with absolutely no exploits, but those things are absolutely nuts. And then there's the Funtime animatronics, where Baby literally stores a claw in her stomach and can capture children, and their AI is so advanced that Ballora can talk, and she isn't really possessed. Unless we go off the FNAF novels, and even if we did, it's from 5 different kids, so they would just be gargling. And the animatronics' ability to free roam is incredible. They were doing this before they got possessed as well, so their AI is incredibly advanced. Yet for some reason, they don't have smartphones or better computers. Like, NASA would be interested in the AI of these animatronics, so why is there other pieces of technology that are the same as they would normally be in that era? It makes no sense to me. And it's 7, wall tiles. FNAF 3 is a trippy game to say the least. With multiple different endings and a load of puzzles along the way, the supposed to be final game of the series takes some weird turns. But I think the most egregious offense is the freaking goddamn wall tiles. Why do you have to dial in a phone number on some panels in the wall in order to set souls of dead kids free? Like, What? Where did that come from, and why is nobody questioning this anymore? Like, the other games came out and we just forgot about this. Was it because the series was meant to be a dream but isn't anymore? Like, is it because William had left some weird security pad behind these tiles? Is it not real at all and we're just tripping balls? Because honestly, with the amount of hallucinations and fear we have, not to mention any sleep deprivation that could also be happening, it's entirely plausible that this just isn't real at all, and that these wall tiles, special minigames, and Shadow Bonnie action figures we do see are just a result of multiple different issues. That, or it's the reason William started killing, because like, WTF. And at 6, limited power. The original difficulty of this game comes from the fact that you have limited power, at least in FNAF 1. This adds stakes since you can't just keep your doors closed the whole time, and you can't just keep the lights on outside. And it's explained to us, and just flat out told to us in the survival logbook, that the building has limited power after 12 AM. Why? That makes no sense. Absolutely none. Why would a building have restricted power after midnight? I've never heard of that before. And unless the franchise owner is extremely cheap and doesn't want more of an electricity bill, there would be no reason to set up a system that cuts you off. Plus, if that's the case, why risk a more costly lawsuit in that case if someone does get hurt or dies because of the limited power? Even if you won and didn't have to pay, you still have to pay the lawyer fees, because by no means would any judge make someone who got injured at work pay for the company's fees. At least I'd hope not. Especially when the game takes place. Halfway through and at number 5, FNAF AR. I've said it before and I will say it a million more times. Why is the company sending out animatronics that they know are dangerous? The whole point of FNAF AR is that the company is sending these animatronics to try and rebuild their reputation. Same thing with Help Wanted. But then they see that they're infected with a virus turning them hostile, but instead of recalling them like any normal company, they send out more animatronics, including multiple versions of the killer that caused them to lose their reputation in the first place. They did not think that it was just an older Bonnie model and decided to call it Springtrap. If that was the case, it would be listed in AR as Old Bonnie or Spring Bonnie, not Springtrap. They know exactly what they're doing and nobody has called them out yet. Companies will get in trouble for making a freaking tiny mistake in their game, but this company can get away with just letting people die? That's sus as hell. Purple is sus. And at 4, business deals. The people behind the Fazbear Entertainment Company, whether it be some board of directors or William Afton, aren't the brightest bunch. The ideas are there, but they're not executed well. Why the living hell would hiring someone to make games about the tragedies that took place in your restaurants ever seem like a good idea? That shouldn't have worked in the slightest. The main concept of using a game to make fun of the deaths of kids is already pretty messed up. And while it seems to have worked in the FNAF universe, why did they ever try it? Those events now will never be lost in time. Those games are there forever. And if they're as popular as the games are in our world, there are people who made whole YouTube channels about the series. At least when YouTube comes out. When does YouTube come out in this world? Like, I know one kid said MatPat's line in one of the Fazbear Frights books, and then the book said, as his favorite YouTuber says, but like, when did that story take place? After 2005, or was YouTube around earlier in this timeline? Because if it is, am I still the host on Top 10 Gaming? I kinda wanna be canon in FNAF 2. And at 3, business expansion. When a company undergoes a tragedy like 5 missing children, you can usually assume that they're either going under or will never be the same. This would go for any company, but especially a company directed at kids. Like, if Chuck E. Cheese actually had this happen, nobody would be taking their kids there. But for some reason, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has not only been able to keep their doors open, but make them bigger, opening an entire shopping mall based on their characters. What the, like, how the actual hell did this happen? From having to shut down at the end of basically every FNAF game, to opening an entire mall-sized pizzaplex that has even more opportunities for your kids to get lost in? What the ever-loving crap happened to make that work? This has to be the most ridiculous form of logic in this series. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't care how many comments say that they would love a real FNAF. If it was actually real and there were actual deaths, you'd be scared crapless to go there. You wouldn't actually go unless you were an adult with no kids or a YouTuber trying to put together the mystery of what really happened, and to see if their pizza is recycled. Penultimately, in at number 2, investigation. Speaking of trying to find out what really happened, why didn't the cops? We know that there was an investigation thanks to the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, but they never found the bodies, even though the animatronics smelt like death and were oozing mucus and blood. So much that they had to actually shut down according to the FNAF 1 news clippings. So what gives? Why did they close their investigation so quickly? Or why didn't they look into the suits when it was reported that they were leaking blood? I don't care if it's the 80s and the police don't have the tech they do now. If a place you were investigating missing people but found no bodies had something that is leaking blood, you go check that out. You don't just leave it behind and say, that can't be related. Who the hell thinks like that? It's so disgusting to me. And honestly, even though it's a game that has to have a reason to continue, they should have done more. I get that if they had found the bodies, we wouldn't have gotten so many games, but sometimes it's quality over quantity. Guess they had to meet their arrest quota for the month or something, so they just dropped this case like it was coal. Finally, in at number 1, doors. You knew this was going to be on the list. I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That makes no sense. Even if it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing power to keep the doors open rather than closed. Gravity doesn't work in reverse. If the magnet is off, the door would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, but what in this universe makes this make sense? There is no conceivable way that these doors should be working in that way, but they do. They do, and it makes me mad. Why do you do this to me? Sky Daddy Scott, why? I really want merch that says Sky Daddy Scott though, for real. That would be hilarious. Just like Scott's avatar on like a cloud. Yes.
Number 10, Night 5 phone call. It's possible that the creepy phone call we get on Night 5 of FNAF 1 is just there to creep us out, and if that is its only meaning or purpose, I would say it does its job pretty well. But of course, that is never enough for us FNAF fans. We need it to mean something. Why does it happen? And why only on Night 5? Is there a hidden message somewhere in there? While many fans have broken down this recording, lots of theories claim that it's saying something different than other theories. It doesn't seem we've universally been able to agree on the words being said or the meaning behind them, if there really was any meaning at all. We still don't have a confirmed answer for this creepy call, where it came from, or what it's trying to tell us. Is it a demonic message? Are the children trying to reach out? Or is it just there to scare FNAF 1 players? And it really does mean nothing. Number 9, Purple Guy. So one of the unexplained parts of FNAF is something that I feel like we have been trying to justify for years, but that also might just be as simple as a game design explanation. This one, I guess, is sort of explained, but it's never been explicitly confirmed by Scott Cawthon, I don't believe. So because I feel like it's interesting and we don't know for sure, I figured I'd include it here. In the mini games, William Afton appears as a purple guy. This became so synonymous with the character that one of his aliases even became Purple Guy. But why does he appear to be purple? Some claim this is because William Afton is an undead figure. He died, he rotted, turning purple, much like Michael did in Sister Location. He also looks purple in that game as well, in the mini games. If we even want to call those mini games, I don't know, the mini walking about. And so, because William Afton's corpse is all decomposed, that's how he appears. But what about in FNAF 3? We also see a mini game where he seems to be alive as we watch as he gets into the Springtrap suit, running from what we assume are the ghosts of his victims. Once in the suit, it's evident that the spring locks have malfunctioned, puncturing his body and killing him. So if he doesn't die till after, how could he be purple before? Why would he appear purple before his death in these games? Well, some have theorized it's to make the character stand out. A Redditor by the username of Stray Dogs actually suggested that it is actually because of the style of old Atari 2600 games. William Afton is actually a shadowy figure. Those old games usually only had a black backdrop. So for anything that was supposed to be shadowy, you would use purple or something to avoid it blending into the background. I think that's actually a pretty good explanation. So I know I said unexplained, but that one might be explained because I just think it makes sense. But let me know what you think. Is it rotting, or is it old game styles, or do you still feel like we don't have an answer for it yet? And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up. If you love FNAF videos, make sure you show us you love them so we can make more content for you. Number 8, Ballora's song. Something that continues to haunt me is Ballora's song. Many fans believe that Ballora is a stand-in for William Afton's deceased or simply ex-wife who left him in some kind of permanent capacity, whether through death or just by choice. Ballora's song that she sings seems to play into this theory very, very well. Ballora sings about wanting someone to come join her, someone who is secluded, seemingly in mourning, and who has no joy left in their life. The idea here is that Ballora is echoing the feelings of Afton's wife, who felt that William was lost to her because of his work, and possibly because of an accident that caused them to lose a child, also adding distance between them. Ballora sings, "All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. It's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away." If Ballora was built to represent William's wife, who left him after the loss of a child, then these lyrics seem to make a lot of sense. However, we still have no real idea if Ballora is meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or if William was ever married at all. I'm still contemplating whether or not his children really are his biological children and not kids that he adopted, created, or potentially kidnapped. What do you think? Is Ballora meant to represent Mrs. Afton, or is she just another of William's twisted creations meant to just creep us out? Number 7, crying child? Children? One thing we still aren't sure of is who exactly the crying child is. What's more, we have a few different crying children that pop up throughout the series. Usually when we talk about the crying child, we're talking about the character who appears in FNAF 4. But for the purpose of this point, what I'm actually curious about is your theories on the crying child or children who appear in the games previous to number 4. You can see hints of them in the games prior, but you'll definitely have spotted them in FNAF 3. There they show up prominently in mini-games, including in the Happiest minigame, where the crying child there must be given cake. Who are these crying children hinted at in previous games? Are all these appearances a cry back to the crying child, or are they all different children who just happen to all be miserable? Are they all victims? I have so many questions about everything. I'm like, this probably, but also we still don't know, so what's going on? Number 6, the end of Sister Location. One of the endings for Sister Location, not the true ending, but still, shows us that despite us managing to survive the night and escape Ennard, if that's the ending you get, avoiding getting scooped, even when we make it safely home to watch our soaps, we're not truly safe. Instead, we are pursued by Ennard, who somehow manages to escape the facility without us, even though that was the whole point of needing to scoop us in the first place, was to be able to escape. And also, miraculously, either finds a way to follow us home or find out somehow where we live. I guess they could have our address on file at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but still, how did they get out? What? Number 5, it's me. It's me is a phrase that pops up all over the place in FNAF 1 and is classified as being a hallucination. But what does it mean and where does it come from? There are a wide variety of theories on this subject, but many of them differ. One thing that many have in common is they believe the words "it's me" are coming from the animatronics, but whether the phrase is intended to be malicious, reassuring, or simply is some kind of plea for help from the spirits that haunt those animatronics remains to be decided on. What's more, these are just theories about the phrase. We still don't really have any definitive proof that tells us exactly what "it's me" is meant to refer to and why it shows up all over the place in FNAF 1, from Foxy's sign here and there to background posters to simply appearing on your screen in accompaniment with either Freddy or Bonnie. That is, of course, if you get that glitch, because it doesn't always show up, but it can. Number 4, crying child. While many still believe the crying child is the protagonist of FNAF 4, we don't really know much about them, or if they truly are the protagonist we're meant to be playing as in that game. The crying child is often thought to be the third child of William Afton, but none of their appearances have ever explained who exactly they are, so we are still left even wondering if this is true. I also feel like we don't even really know for sure if they're the third child in terms of like the order of the siblings. I don't know. You can let me know if you feel like we have lots of evidence to prove something like that, but I don't feel like we have enough evidence even for that yet. Most of what we know about them is based on theories we've all come up with to make sense of their importance and their existence. Why they have been so prominently featured as a character still remains to be seen. Are they actually in Afton? Is this some kind of red herring meant to mislead us? Could they somehow be Michael Afton at a younger age? Or could they somehow have some kind of tie there? Or perhaps William Afton, but younger? I don't think that makes sense with dates, but the dates that appear in the game really only make the mystery more confusing, as it's very hard for us to pinpoint a timeline in regards to the potential siblings' dates of birth and death, or just the dates of anything in general. It's very confusing. I'm confused. Are you confused? Number 3, Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy. Why do Shadow Bonnie and Golden Freddy crash your game? This is a mystery that still seems unexplained. I guess we could just easily explain it away with the fact that antagonists in the game each simply have their own thing that they do, their own way of punishing you, and this is Shadow Bonnie's and Golden Freddy's way of doing so. If you are not proactive enough, that is. Still, it seems very meta in comparison to some of the other punishments, as this punishment isn't something that happens to the character you're playing as in-game, like losing power, being unable to access your screens, doors getting stuck open or closed and things like that. But instead, it's something that happens outside of the in-game environment, affecting you as a player, not you as a character in-game. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean anything? Number 2, getting scooped. A strange moment in terms of what we see happen in-game versus what would really happen in real life can be experienced in Sister Location. In this game, at the end of your true story, your character, Eggs Benedict, who we believe to be Michael Afton, gets scooped. Ennard then wears your skin as a human disguise, allowing them to leave the Circus Baby and Entertainment rental facility. Afterwards, the protagonist rejects the insides of Ennard after outwardly rotting. Being that they have no guts and should be dead, this would, in theory, be the end of their story, because now they literally have nothing inside them. They just upchucked it. They would crumble to the ground and finally be 100% dead. I mean, technically getting scooped should also make you 100% dead, but in either case, that's not what happens. Instead, you hear Circus Baby's voice reassuring you that you won't die, and we see good ol' Eggs Benny come back to life. How is this possible? We still have no idea. Though I would, once again, like to use this opportunity to assert my Afton's children are lifelike humanoid animatronics theory. Anyone? Anyone taking that theory? I think it's a pretty good theory. Number 1, the murders. One of the greatest mysteries is also one of the most important ones, especially when it comes to understanding the most prominent character in the franchise, William Afton. The murders that he committed still baffle players. We also don't even really know if he committed all of the murders. Recently, there has been some doubt based on evidence found in the Fazbear Frights books as to whether or not he could actually have maybe an accomplice, possibly Vanny, and even more ridiculously, I don't know, possibly a time-traveling Vanny? I don't know. Why William Afton seeks to kill is still a huge unexplained question in the game, and one that is crazy, crazy important, because it would also help to explain ideally so many other things that William has done. The murderous events that have been referred to in the lore, and the why behind them remains one of the most puzzling and most important mysteries that FNAF has given us.